Hello and welcome everybody to episode 3. And today I am going to be reading some Reddit users' true or not horror stories slash encounters. Just pretend I flipped those words and said encounters first and then stories. So let's get straight into it. We have this story by Saint Sparkles. She said, I had awesome parents who let me sleep in the living room on weekend nights when I was very young because my sister was a light sleeper and I could stay up until dawn. But of course, I always end up sleeping on the couch because Nick at night made me tired. So I wake up one night I wake up to prickly feeling like an instinct, just bolted into a sitting position and stared out the front window. We lived in rural Georgia, so you can imagine the magnitude of trees. In perfect light cast from the moon, I see a silhouette of someone in this effing tree. The family dog dashes to the window and is snarling into the glass. Terrified, I run into my parents' room and try to explain to my parents that there is a strange person outside. Dad grabs something defensive and darts outside with the dogs to beat the wax off the hothead. I tremble in Mama's arms until Dad comes home and says he saw no one and to go to bed. I decide to sleep in my regular bedroom. I fill in my sister in as to what happened. Dad is making regular rounds in the house with a cup of coffee. We're all still, and I finally think, I can sleep. Nope. I notice the man outside my window. From what I can see in the midnight, he gives me a shush signal and runs away. Just turns around to run in a straight line away. I swear, I couldn't stop crying for what felt like hours. Saint Sparkles, this is a freaking weird story. That is scary. He was definitely hiding in the shadows in your bushes, bro. Next story by Can You Say Throwaway 19. My house sits further back in the lot than most other houses. It is a strange layout as well. The sidewalk runs the length of the living room and ends at the front porch, which lets into the living room. Large windows that do not open allow great light to get into the living room, but at the cost of no privacy. The rest of my family was on vacation, and having the house to myself, I decided I would get smashed. Well, I passed out on the couch in the living room at about 9 when I realized I was too scared to walk back to my room. The couch is right underneath these big windows. I woke up suddenly, not knowing why. I had a severe case of the chills, and I could not figure out why. Then the banging started. It came from right above me. I did not move, but I opened my eyes and looked up at the window. Someone was standing there, pounding on the glass. Someone was standing there pounding on the glass, he repeated twice. Without moving, I looked at the cable box. It was around 3 in the morning. The banging continues. Then it stopped suddenly, but I did not move. Suddenly it commences again, coming from two different directions now. Someone is banging on the window, and another person is banging on the front door. Okay, so let's just keep in mind, guys, there's two different people banging on two different doors. One on the window, one on the front door. They kept doing it, would not go away. Finally, after about 40 minutes, they quit. It was the most terrifying event I can recall at the moment. It made me a nervous wreck after that. I called a friend the next day to see if he could come over and stay for the rest of the week, and his response was, "What the F for? So that we can both be murdered in our sleep? Thanks a lot, a-hole." That was actually funny. Honestly, if my friend said that, I would totally stay the night with them because it's like, I know where my friend lives. She does not live in a good area, and it's better if it's two against one than one against someone big, you know what I mean? And I just think it's good to have that security for your friend. Next story. I think this person's account was deleted, but it reads, I was 17 and had just gotten my license. Back in high school, my friends and I had made it a mission to find abandoned houses to throw parties in. First of all, love that. We had a few good candidates, but the motherlode was this house I would pass on my home from work. It was an undeveloped shell of a huge home with a large property in the back. I had told one of my friends about it, and one day before we went to see a movie, I took him to the house. It was about dusk in summer, so I had my headlights on. I pulled into the front of the house, and we were there for like 10 seconds tops before we pulled back to go to the main road. A minute later, this big truck pulls up behind us with his high beams on and riding our butt. My friend and I took note of it, but paid it no mind as we headed back to the main road. At the light, I turned right, but the truck cut through the gas station at the corner and blocked us off. Out of the truck comes this big hulk of a man, and my friend and I are pooping our pants. He taps on the window, and I roll it down. Now, the really freaky part is that this is a busy road, and now there was no one in sight. He asks us what we're doing at the house, and I quickly lied and said we were making a U-turn. He stares at us for a few seconds, smiles, and sends us our way. To this day, the house remains unfinished, and I'm convinced it's a drug operation of some sort. Long story short, don't go into abandoned houses, man. So, my take on this is that if you guys had stayed at that house, if you guys had actually gone off that the car to look inside the house to see if it's like partyable or whatever, that man would have definitely he would have definitely done something to you guys. Like, I'm not even joking. I don't think it was a drug operation of some sort because like you guys had said, it was an abandoned house and you would drive from there to work, so I'm pretty sure you would have noticed something. And usually, when a drug operation is happening at an abandoned house, there's always going to be a car, even if it looks abandoned or brand new, there's always going to be a car. The windows would be boarded up. It's just building a drug operation in an abandoned house is very, very risky because, again, if someone nearby who lives nearby that house could call the cops, they would just think it's teenagers trespassing. So again, I don't think it would be a drug operation or anything. Next story by Arthur C. Okay, so this happened to me last summer. Okay, let's just keep in mind, guys, I have not read any of these stories. I just scrolled to the shortest ones and screenshotted them. So I'm reading these for the first time too. So this is my raw reaction. Okay, let's just get into it with Arthur. Okay, so this happened to me last summer when I was back at my parents' house during the holidays. It was around 3 a.m. and I was in my sister's room. Oh, I was in my room and on my computer when I got a call from my sister. Now that was already a little bit weird, since my sister's room is just down the hall from mine and she could have just came in my room. I went to pick up and the call ended as soon as I reached the phone. I figured that she wanted to speak with me, so I got up and went to her room. As soon as I reached the door, she started screaming that someone was in the room with her, so I busted in, and of course nobody was there. After she stopped crying, she told me that she woke up and saw a dark shadow just centimeters from her face, and that's when she screamed. So I told her that she called me. She told me that her phone is not in her room and that she was sleeping. Sure enough, her phone is actually downstairs in her purse. The weird part is that I have the log of her call on my phone, but she doesn't. Never managed to explain this one. Honestly, I'm a little scared reading these because I mean, I have my pink LED lights on in my room, but I'm still a little frightened, you know what I mean? Um, this is actually really weird. That's actually so creepy, dude. Oh, a shadow like inches, centimeters from her face? Oh my god. Okay, this story is by another deleted account. It starts off as my grandmother's list. I think this is the grandmother story. My grandmother swore by this story till her dying day. It was during the war in London, and my dad was a baby. She was bombed out of her house and was staying with a friend. The friend had set her up in a room on the top floor. Anyway, she was taking my dad upstairs to bed when a figure materialized on the stairs telling her not to sleep in that room tonight. She hopped back downstairs and told her friend that she and my dad were sleeping in the sitting room that night. Her friend was annoyed but agreed. The night a bomb exploded near the house and the roof caved in right on top of my dad's car. He would have been killed. Another person replied to this story, named Raisin Zell, saying, I have a very similar story. My grandmother was around 7 and lived in Germany during World War II. Her town was getting bombed regularly. One day, her little brother kept crying and begged to stay in her neighbor's house for the night. Her parents were okay with it and they went to stay with the neighbors. That night, a bombing run came through and their house was completely destroyed. It's crazy how close I was to not existing. That's the exact same as the deleted account that they responded to. Like, this is like really, like, it's interesting because a bunch of people talk about these entities in their home. They describe entities as always negative, but I don't think there's always good and bad to everything, in my opinion. So I think it's good that that person, that whatever it was, that figure in the grandmother from London, that war, it's good that I feel like that figure was good. They literally warned her that something was going to happen. I don't know. First of all, I don't know why the friend was annoyed because, hello, like what? Okay, like they're getting bombed. It's okay if you want to stay there. Like there's what's the difference if they live in the family, if they sleep in the family room, in the living room or whatever, than to sleep in the upstairs room. Like I don't know. I personally would feel I'd feel better. I don't know. It's kind of tricky. Would you guys feel better sleeping in the living room, or would you guys feel better, like, despite this figure speaking to you? Let's just pretend the figure didn't speak to you, and if you were in the grandma's shoes, would you guys sleep upstairs or downstairs? It's kind of a slippery slope because if you sleep downstairs and the upstairs caves in, you're completely smashed down into the floor. But then if you sleep upstairs and a bomb hits, you're just automatically dead. But if you survive, the top floor collapses onto the bottom floor and you have a higher chance of surviving than if you were on the bottom floor. I don't know. Okay. Next story. This one's kind of long, so I'm going to try talking fast. Almost abducted by five guys in a super shady part of town really late one night, saved by hero comedian. Back in 2004, I was a young, dumb 17-year-old country girl in the city for the first time for college. One night, I decided I could totally safely walk back to my dorm at around 1:30 in the morning. Okay, that's you're 17, baby. No, at 1:30 in the morning? Okay, despite not really knowing where I was. Of course, I instantly end up wandering around a terrible part of the city. Girl, bye. Most of the streetlights are busted out, trash everywhere, loud arguments from inside the dilapidated as F row houses. In short, I wouldn't even want to be here in the middle of the day. A car drives up behind me and slows down as they're keeping pace with me for nearly an entire block. I look over and there were five unsavory looking men inside. By this point, I was approaching an intersection and they pull up, making a left, and stop in the street directly in my path. Mother F. I completely panic at this point and just stand there right in front of them. My mind went completely blank. I've never been that scared in my life. It didn't even make sense to try to run because they would have caught me without question. I'm not really sure how long I stood there, but suddenly, the porch light in the house, just past the car, came on. Dude casually strolls outside carrying a bag of trash, and car peels away. I completely break down crying and shaken. Dude spots me and listens to my probably incoherent story, takes me inside, and gives me a soda. Then he and his roommate walked me back to my dorm. They were both lovely and invited me to check out their stand up sometime. But unfortunately, I was too young to get into a bar. I never saw them again. Don't even remember their names, but feel pretty confident that if that guy hadn't decided to take his trash out at 1 a.m. on a Saturday, my life would have taken a really esh turn that night. Girl, that's crazy. Like like what? You're 17, 1:30 in the morning, girl. You gotta know, like, no. Oh, okay, because you were a country girl in the city for the first time. I get that. I lived in the country for almost a year, and it was definitely an interesting experience to say the freaking least. So, yeah. I think, of course, you still had to be careful with that guy who let you in his home. Because, I mean, of course, it could have gone either way. One, those five guys could have done something horrible to you, girl, or two, those guys in the house who saved you could have done something. But luckily, not everybody in this world is bad, and I feel like it's important to highlight that. Next story by Wolf Chris. When we first moved into the house I grew up in, I used to hear things calling my name from the opposite end of the house. Like, I would be in my room playing with Legos or something, and I would hear my dad call my name from his room. So I'd go to my parents' room and ask them what they want, and they'd always tell me that they never called my name. Being a little kid, I honestly started to think that they were playing a joke on me, because this happened once a day every couple of days. Oh, hell no, man. Well, one night it happened, and I went to ask them what they wanted, like always. But right as I stepped into their room, I heard my mom's voice calling for me from the living room, which is all the way on the other side of the house. It was at that exact point that I knew no one was tricking me, because I was looking for both of my parents sitting in front of me. I kind of kept this to myself until my brother was diagnosed with partial narcolepsy. One of the symptoms of narcolepsy is apparently oral hallucinations. So I thought maybe I had it too. Went and got myself checked. Completely fine. So I had no idea what was calling my name all those years. I still hear it at night whenever I come visit and stay over. Someone responded named IDGAF Ox. This happens to me as well. I was told it was anxiety. Guys, I have anxiety. This is not freaking anxiety. Like, what? And I also didn't know that if you suffer from narcolepsy, you can have oral hallucination, oral, AURAL, oral hallucinations. Sorry, I don't know how to say that. That's actually, that's interesting. Someone, an account deleted, said, posted this elsewhere, but here it goes. Not me, but my sister. So growing up, my sister had an imaginary friend. She said she was an older lady and she was nice, and her name was EE. She talked to her and played with her, all that jazz, until she was probably 4 or so, then it stopped. Fast forward to when my sister was about 10, my mom wasn't home. She got a call to go to the nursing home for GPA, so she bolts with Pops with their father, I believe. My sister and I shared a room at the time, and she was in there doing whatever, and I was on the other end of the house. All of a sudden, I hear the radio in our room click on, turn all the way up, turn all the way down, and off. This happened like 3 times, so I go in there to be like, WTF, kid, knock it off. And she is sitting in her room, just white as a ghost. I go over to the radio to unplug it. No plug, no batteries, only radio in the house. I look at her, and she goes, it was EE. I saw her. It was EE. So I call mom freaking out, and mom is so upset. Apparently, grandpa had just passed away. Okay, weird. I drop incident, whatever. A few days later at the funeral, a relative comes up to me and gives us a pic she found. My sister goes, hey, it's EE. It was a picture of my grandparents when they got married. My grandmother died before I was even thought of. When my mom was 11, when my mom was 11, basically. The mom was, sorry, I'm like reading it wrong. The mom was 11 when the grandma died before she was even a thought. We live in the house my mom grew up in. We had no pictures of her at all as my step grandmother got rid of them all when she moved into the house a few years later after mom's death. Wow. That's actually like that's scary. So your sister's imaginary friend was your grandmother that died when your mom was 11. That is so that's crazy cuz don't isn't there this thing where people say that children like when you're really really young and then she said her until her sister was 4 is when it stopped that when you're around that age, like younger than 4, you are more prone to paranormal activity, like dogs and stuff like that. That's actually insane. Next story, um, by memory underscore later. I lived in a bizarre little house as a child. It was incredibly tall and thin. like an attached house except freestanding, with 3 floors, a basement, and an attic. It was full of quirks such as 2 fully functional fireplaces, a shower stall in the center of the base. That's so weird. A shower in the what? A shower stall in the center of the basement? A backyard so small that you could not take 5 paces without hitting the fence, and an old-timey rope pull dumbwaiter that led from the kitchen to my bedroom. I loved that weird little place, but unfortunately it was incredibly old, and half of its charm was the fact that it seemed to have been designed by an inarticulate conclave of lunatics, and eventually the repair costs exceeded what my parents were willing to sink into it, and we had to move. Preparing for the move was a chore. I packed most of my stuff myself, and I had taken to throwing away stuff down the dumbwaiter and shoving all my clothes so thickly in my closet that they became a single solid brick of fabric. While clearing that closet out, in fact, I came across a feature I hadn't noticed before: an attic entrance in the roof. Being an adventurous kid, I opened her up, stood on the clothes brick, and began my first and last exploration into the topmost part of our weird little house. The first thing I noticed was that it wasn't as dark as it should have been. The place was strung with old red Christmas lights, which still burned with leftover incandescents. Incandescents. Sorry, I don't know. I don't like know what that word is. And a dozen little cracks and holes peeped down into all the bedrooms below. The second thing I noticed was that place was set up for habitation. The insulation was plasticed away. There was an old gurney piled with sleeping bags and sheets, and a rusted mint green refrigerator which still worked when I tested it. The third thing was the bones. There were lots of bones. I was a kid at the time with a limited understanding of anatomy, but there were bones of all types, heaped into a series of piles around the center of the attic, small and large, clean and white, from every and any imaginable sort of creature, haphazardly stacked in a half-dozen osseous clumps. 2 of them were blackened, as if someone had tried to burn them, and the walls nearest those blackened piles were scrawled in dark bone-charred messages. Mostly, there were smears, but the word sorry appeared more than once. That room had been sitting over my head for 8 years while I slept. What the heck? From the sounds of it, someone was living in that room. There were holes? Let me go back to that. Hold on. There were dozens little cracks and holes peeped down into all the bedrooms below. Guys, I wonder if there was like a way to get in through the outside. Like, I don't know if the only door was that in their closet. I think the door was in their closet. That's what they said. Let me go back to that. While cleaning that closet out, in fact, I came across a feature I hadn't noticed before: an attic entrance in the roof. Yeah, I just wonder if there was like an entrance to that attic from somewhere else or if that's the only place. That's insane. Okay, well, this is the end of today's video, which was episode 3, Reddit users true or not true horror story encounters. Again, we can only go based off of these stories. We don't know if they're true or not. I like to believe that they are. I mean, I don't know, Reddit users can be a little bit, you know, just so random, but thank you guys for watching. Make sure you subscribe, and goodbye.